Now here's the important stuff. Again, this is a refresher demonstration. I'm going to show you a few things. Chick in the back, chick in the front. You guys did not see this yesterday. You have to take this with a grain of salt. These folks all saw everything that you're going to see right now, but they saw it in depth. Check with them for questions, all right? They will help you out because they are your homies, all right? So the way this is going to happen, I'm going to show you a couple of different things that I showed you yesterday. This clay is, it's like a living, breathing thing almost, all right? One thing that I didn't really bring up yesterday was the fact that when this clay dries, or as it dries, as it loses water content, the clay shrinks, okay? You're going to lose about 2%, 3% worth of size as the clay is shrinking. When those things come out of the kiln, they're going to be a lot smaller than you remembered them. Like when you go to make a big, like a pitcher or something like that, and it's this big, you're like, yeah, this thing's sweet, it's gonna hold a gallon of orange juice. And then you come out and you're like, oh, that's a little bit smaller than I expected. It is going to shrink, I promise you. And this is what causes problems when we end up scoring and slipping, when we end up putting our materials together. One thing you need to remember and think about, that when you are choosing two pieces of clay to put together, this is the stuff that has been sitting out since yesterday. So it is very hard. I have to put a considerable amount of effort to cut through it. This is the perfect time to carve. I get a good, crisp, clean line when I do carve, okay? And that's good. I want that. Now the problem with this is if I take this very hard piece that's already started to shrink significantly or considerably, and I try to attach it to this guy right here, there's a good chance it's going to stay and work, right? But there's also a good chance that we're going to get some cracking. And you could see it kind of on one of these guys right here. In these corners, because this one was very, very dry and this one was still pretty wet for what it was. As this one starts to shrink because it was behind schedule, it's going to shrink and separate from this one, so you do end up with cracks. The absolute best thing to do is connect a soft piece of clay to a soft piece of clay, or if they are both at the same water content in terms of leather hardness, that is the best time. You can make something over here today, you can make something over here today, and if you want it to hold its shape, like this guy, whoops, I dropped it, oh, I'm hitting it, it's gonna hold its shape every time. It'll be easier to connect, to score and slip, all right? And this is what that process looks like again if you're connecting leather hard stuff to leather hard. For leather hard clay, it tends to help to soften up the clay first by adding a little bit of water, and then you do want to go in with a needle tool on this one and open up the pores. You want to open up the surface. This is very, very important. And if it's dry like this one is, this one very dry, we want to add a little bit more of the good stuff to the point where you know that you have enough. I'm like putting a whole bunch. And if you remember from the demonstration yesterday, you want to open up both surfaces, otherwise your project will not work. Soften this up. Open up both joining edges, otherwise it will not work. Now the cool thing about this is as I push this, I can push down considerably harder than I did with my soft clay, and it's going to hold just about every time. And the good thing about this even further is because it is so solid, you can very easily wipe a good clean edge into this thing without worrying about it distorting. You still do have to, at some point, depending on what type of part it is, you do want to connect some of this stuff, push that down into it, do the surgery process. You can usually take a little bit of slip and wipe it in there, but it's a good, fast way to get a good, clean edge. And this thing for certain is going to hold, all right? Even after the fire. You can use the squeeze out to fill in those dead spaces. It's a good way to get a good, clean line, all right? Not going anywhere, not going anywhere, not going anywhere. That's a very, very strong connection, okay? Now, if we go back to the demonstration yesterday where you will all be working with soft clay, it is an option for you to, let's say, build the shape of the face, start with the flat piece. This guy right there, let's say this is gonna be my whole gargoyle. And it is totally possible for you to build a nose that's going to go right there, and then to let these both set up and dry a little bit, you know, an hour, 2 hours, whatever it ends up being, and then take those two hard pieces and connect them together just like I showed you. But you can also, because these are at the same water content, you can connect these right now and you're not going to have any issues with them separating because they're drying at different rates. Okay, this is a pretty important thing to think about. As you're doing this, I'm going to use my handy dandy scratcher tool, scoring tool. Open that one up just like that every time. Open this one up as well. Going to take my clay, my slip, and pardon my term, but I am going to dab the clay in there. You know, I told first period last year and the year before, if I ever used the word dab, one of the freshman boys in here would just be like, and I'm glad you guys are out of it now, so thank you for that one. Nobody's shuffling. Remember when you were in elementary school and you were all hopping around compulsively? Nobody's doing this thing anymore. God. All right. So score this side, score that side. And again, this clay is soft, so you have to be a little bit more gentle with it when you're connecting. You do want to get the squeeze out right there. And then we move on. You want to do the surgery. And then eventually you want to go in and blend that seam so that it is seamless. Okay? Very straightforward. This is exactly what you saw yesterday. Again, I'm using a lighter color slip so that you can see what's going on in there. Next, I was watching some demonstration videos. I was considering having somebody else show you how to score and slip so you could hear them talk about it. In a couple of videos that I saw, they demonstrated with leather hard clay, and the way they described the scratching and scoring is by making a big old bunch of tic-tac-toes. This can work, but for you guys as beginners, it's less likely to work. So I am discouraging this one. I do not want you to do this way. If you're going to use the needle tool, I want you to scratch it up like that. I really want you to open up the pores. Thank you. Leslie Lizaraga. Are you in here? It says go right now. This is what I want to see when you're scoring and slipping. Okay? Both ends of the thing, both connecting ends. Add the slip. Bada bing, bada boom. All right? Is there anything unclear about what I just showed you? Do you have any questions about this process? All right, super.